is Landed in Leadership and Enlightenment, a podcast where the guests are exceptional humans that have faced their fears to crest into their best selves, growing into a way they can help their communities, creating opportunities, and sharing their secrets and their tips that they learned along the way. Without further ado, here we are, my friends. Have a great time today and enjoy Leadership and Enlightenment.
Is for his little boutique group of collective hotels here on the Pacific Ocean. And I'm based on one of the hotels called the Cliffs, which is kind of the grand dame of his collection. But he's got some really cute hotels here right on the ocean. And they're a little boutique, but they're upscale. And right now I'm chasing the Forbes 4-star designation for this Cliffs, which I did another time in my career in Little Rock, Arkansas, which was really fun. It's hard to change the culture, but that's what I like to do. So it's been really fun taking this group of employees, and none of them have worked in a 4-star or 5-star environment before. So it's me explaining what it's like. And of course, Forbes helps out. You pay dearly for it,
Yeah.
But it's been really fun about 18 months into this campaign. It's been really fun watching the culture change. It's been really cool.
Well, it's great. You're about the best I've ever seen at doing what you do.
Listen to you.
We had that chance to work to Bellagio together for, was it 4 years we were there?
I think Bellagio was probably 3 years of my 5, right? Because I was at MGM Grand prior to that. But yeah, you and I hit it off well. It was a really fun, it was a good teamwork there, I thought. I loved your whole department, and we had some fun things to do. And it was a fun hotel. It had some tough ways to go, though, right? It was living on a reputation that it had for years, but it started to show a little bit wear. I mean, the Wynn and Aria, our own property Aria, was kind of like killing us, So
yeah, no, it's true.
Yeah.
But what I noticed is that you invested into your employees with a structure of learning and growth that was past the company. I mean, you brought speakers in that motivated me. And I still tell stories today about the green, wet grass and why buffaloes run through the storm. And, it really, those kind of things to me, like, they made a difference. And I know that it's hard to see that when you're in that role, that you're making that kind of difference. But I also got to see the eyes of your team when you would certify them in sales and you would bring them up into this world that you were in. And you really set this bar for me of how I had seen sales vice presidents and marketing representatives before. And then there was Gregg Herning, who actually came in and created teams.
That's so kind of you. That's so kind
Well,
of
it's
you.
true, though. I mean, it is. And you saw something in me back then, Greg, where I know you stepped outside the lines and you vouched for me in a promotion, you and Michael Dominguez, where it was quite a scene, I'll say, in my own mind of how we all made it through those positionings. And I know the audience will appreciate this because Greg and I worked in the corporate, or what I would call, the hotel industry, the 8 to 10 o'clock at night world for a long time together. And we really killed some great events at Bellagio. But there wasn't a lot of light shining around me from what I could see. It was really like, this is to be done in a tired culture mindset. And however hard you work and look is really, the reflection of what we expect you see. But you saw something else inside. You saw somebody that had momentum in him and that you were willing to invest in that. And to this day, man, I always have cherished that. And I've taken it as one of those steps that really kind of guided me into that next place in my life.
Well, thank you for saying that. I remember it distinctly. I remember that when the position came up, there wasn't a doubt in my mind that you were the guy for it. There was a doubt in your mind, but there wasn't a doubt in my mind. And I love that kind of situation. I still do it to this day, Dean. I find when I take over a staff, I find those nuggets, those people that are sitting there and they just don't know how good they are. But I'll tell you what I loved about you. First of all, your demeanor. I would buy anything from you. I would trust you in anything you say. It's that ability to engage with somebody and all of a sudden have an immediate trust that what you say you're going to do. So I knew you had that going for you. That's something I can't teach. And then what I really liked, though, was the respect that your staff had for you. And so you were way ahead of the game. You just didn't know it. And so I figured that you and I could work together and we'd take that very important catering sector. Holy cow, what did we do? I think we did 50 million. 50 million in catering. When I tell that to my staff nowadays, because I'm running these little boutique hotels, when I tell them we did 50 million in catering alone, they just can't even believe it.
No, it's incredible, right?
3 ballrooms in that gorgeous hotel, and we'd walk. It never got old. I'd walk into the ballroom where we had our staff and your staff had sold it, and we had the other staff servicing it. And we'd walk in those ballrooms, and it would blow you away. It was so beautiful, I
Well,
try
and
to paint the picture.
you held the regard so well. And there was a fascinating part of your demeanor that came out for clients that you love, which we love affectionately as G Money.
Yeah, that's right. They
Are
still
you still
call me
getting on
that.
stage? Are you still getting on stage?
Oh, absolutely. About just what, last July 4th, I did a whole set with this band. I think I did 27 songs or something. And the crowd, the staff here just dies laughing. And my boss, the owner, he just stands up in the stands and just, and then I get done with my set and he sends it on a message, "Hey, tell Greg to get up here." And so I'm walking up to see the owner, and I have to stop and do like 5 or 6 autographs on the way up, and he just about died.
I love that. That's
But
so
yeah,
awesome.
everybody here calls me G Money still. So
I love that. I channel you in my life now. I channel you in G Money. I realize like we are really the only things that stop us from being as great and as big as we can be. And to see your expansion in life and how you brought it all together into, who you are and how you approach it, it showed me like you can be the same person in your outside life and your work life. You don't have to separate those things. And you're a master at that. For the
thank you.
audience, let's get you off, introduced right. Our guest today is Gregg Herning. He's a vice president of sales and marketing. He's been in the business longer than I can even speak to. And Greg is, like you've already heard, he's a mentor in my life. He always has been. And this is just a cherished day for me that we get to kind of riff it on along. But what do you want to talk about, Greg? I know you've got something in there you've been working on.
You know, First of all, when you knew me, I certainly was the VP of sales of the MGM Resorts there with you, and that was fun to do. And I started in the business in the sales and marketing side, and there's still a huge part of that in me. But about, I don't know, halfway through my career, I switched everything over into the operations side. And then when Dominguez called me to work at MGM, I went back into the sales side. But right now I'm the VP of operations of four small boutique properties here in the central coast of California, and a golf course development that our owner is working on as well. But I kind of always had thought of myself as a dual threat. I could ride with the sales and marketing end of this business, which has always been a passion of mine. But also, I love the operations side too. I love taking a hotel and making sure it's the most efficient, well-run property. And of course, coming out of sales, I always try to provide the best P&L financial delivery that the owners and the stockholders deserve. But my main quest all the time is just delivering an unbelievable guest experience. What can we do at whatever level we're at, whatever type of property we're at? What can we do to understand that basic premise in our business that people decided they were going to go to the Cliffs, the hotel I'm at right today on the Central Coast, and they mark on their calendar these days that are very special to them. And I try to convey this to our staff that still is the case, that when we play to a different audience every day, whether you have a 160 room hotel or Bellagio, we had 4,000 rooms. It's constantly in and out, in and out. So I always try to convey the fact that we're cast members, something that Disney taught us 60 years ago. They were so far ahead of the chain, but we play to a different audience every single day. And so we don't have any room for a B team ever. And we always have to be on our game. And one of the things that I bring to a team is that understanding that, don't know if you knew it, but when you get into this business, you're in the entertainment business. And so you got to be comfortable with that. And so it's somehow along the years, I have come up with a couple little formulas that really help to change or to raise that culture. You saw a little bit of it, and with what we did in Bellagio, that hotel was very successful before you and I even got there, and it will remain successful. But what we wanted to do during our tenure there, Dean, is just every employee, let's make them the best version of themselves that they can be. Let's find those hidden stars and bring it out. What I realized is, it's easy to do when you show sincere appreciation for effort. When somebody is going to bring it and try, all they want from you is a little bit of acknowledgement that they're doing it right. Compliment them when things happen. And then when they don't be afraid to change a path, but do so in a constructive manner. It'll make it a learning experience. But what I've really realized is that people want to be led. And so when I decided that I was going to be a leader of people, I started really studying everything I could about leadership. And really that included the past leaders in my life, and
Mhm.
some that were very good at what they did and
Yeah.
some that were not very good at what they did. And I
Yeah.
remember how it made me feel when I worked for a good leader, a leader who I knew had my back and who was trying to
Yeah.
make me the best version of myself. So that's kind of what I bring to the table. So in changing a culture and raising a culture, there's a little tagline I've always used, that engagement is everything. And so we have to interview differently. We have to bring people into our organizations that naturally engage. And otherwise, we're trying to put a square peg into a round hole. It doesn't really matter what their past work experience is if they can't engage, because we're in a business where we're on stage every single day. And as I mentioned, we play to a different audience. So you got to
I
find
think
people who are comfortable with that. And
And I
it's,
think, what's funny, Greg, is like if I look back and you ask me, like if I was to go back to interviewing again for the Bellagio, I would only have one question for the employees. Are you neurodivergent? And if you are, you're hired. Because that's what we do in the events industry,
I
is we're
got
on
you.
stage. If you're a linear thinker, well, I'm sure there's a lot of jobs in accounting and other types of jobs like that where you can add up numbers. But in our world, we have to accept the fact that, hey, we're on the spectrum. That was one of my biggest fears working in Bellagio that I never really discussed with anybody, including you, is that, I'm dyslexic and I'm ADD and I'm OCD. And when we would get super, super tired, that would come through and I could mix a word up. I would say a word in front of another word for no good reason. And it would embarrass me. And I would think that I was presenting myself in not a professional manner. But all that really did is scared me into a hole to constantly rehearse everything I was going to say to everybody and never be my authentic self. And I think that's what you're saying as you're talking through this. Greg, your light shines through as a natural leader, and you fulfill the role without title or pretense. And I think, that's the reason why we're talking on this podcast, is that I've recognized that over the years, is like that light is what you're discussing in me as well. But I had to learn that where I was failing in the beginning was I was trying to make my leadership proud of me rather than worrying about my team.
Huh.
And I call it the Ted Lasso effect. When you watch that show, you realize like Ted is a coach because he loves his players, and that's who you've always been too. I kind of was like Rebecca, running around breaking things, not realizing what I was doing until I realized it. And then it came to fruition my last year or last 2 years when I was there working with my teams and realizing like where that was, and I could really set it in. But you saw that naturally. Where did you start to feel in your life when you were growing up that this was kind of your calling, and why you were getting into this?
Yeah, it's a good point. My dear parents have both passed away by now, but they would, if they were here today, they said it over the years that if there was anybody who found the right niche in their life, it was our son Greg, because they remember, and I remember being a young boy. My father, we were always fortunate enough to get at least one vacation every year, and sometimes it was two, and he would put us all in the family car and take us from Michigan to Florida. That's kind of what you do when you're raised in the Midwest. But anyway, it was always stopping at the motels along the way. He would always give me out of the four kids, I was the one who could pick the hotel, and
Cool.
I would know what kind of amenities they had. I always had to have a pool. And then when we drive up the hotel, I was the first one run in, and I would just a young boy, 10 years old or something, go up to the front desk and say, "The Hernings have arrived," and then they would give me the key, and then I would run down the hall ahead of everybody, open the room, and then open the drapes and start showing to all the people. And it's just funny.
My gosh.
So when I got into the business later, as a young adult, kind of by accident, it was a business I felt so comfortable with. I entered into the group or the convention side of a beautiful beachfront resort in Biloxi, Mississippi, of all places. And then my sales territory was New Orleans and Jackson, Mississippi, and
Ah,
Atlanta, Georgia. And so I learned what it's about, going out and telling the story. Let's just tell the story that there's a lot of places your group can meet, but come to our hotel. Let me tell you what's going to feel like. And
yeah.
that was kind of when I discovered that I could do this. That I could take a planner or planning group, look at the specs, and say we're definitely a good fit. But I know there's a lot of good fits out here. Let me tell you what the difference is. Let me tell you what we're
Yeah.
going to do or what we can do. Then I proceeded up to from a selling point to start managing salespeople. So I would start obviously sharing some of the things that I was successful with. And then I found a real passion for directing sales teams. I found a real passion in getting involved in the marketing side of the business and how can we better position ourselves in the market and display. And so I made a pretty good career, bounced all over this country, worked in some beautiful hotels, and then found myself incredible hotel in Orlando, Florida, where the Peabody Orlando Hotel.
I knew we were going there. Yep.
Yeah, about 13 years with the Peabody Group. That probably was one of my favorite times in my career, and worked in about 3 different cities and all kinds of capacities. But it was my VP of sales, the brand VP for the Peabody Group in Orlando, 1,700 hotel with 1,700 room hotel with about 300,000 square foot of space, brand new space that was open, and had a really nice budget to launch it. And I think that there was a 2-year period, Dean, where we won every award that was out there. All of a sudden, when we had the most successful going hotel in the world, the Hyatt company came in and bought it right from underneath us. And all of us on top, they kept our 1,000 employees, of course.
Yeah, they did.
But the 5 or 6 of us on top, we were made available to the industry, and wouldn't you know, because we had such success there, our dear friend Michael Dominguez, who had just taken a position at MGM Worldwide Resorts, right? He knew me from his previous life with Lowe's. He was a guest speaker on the Lowe's circuit, and I was a speaker on the Peabody circuit, so we knew each other.
There you go.
And he called me, and he heard about the Peabody being sold, and he said, "What are you going to do?" And I said, "I'm going to take a little vacation, and I'm going to call people like you." And
Right.
it was so funny. He said, "I have a hotel for you right now. I have a hotel for you right now." And he said, and it was the MGM Grand. And I said, "What?" And so what a nice little chapter that happened about 6 years, I think, in the Las Vegas market. And people like me in the hotel business for our whole adult life, you got to have a Vegas gig in there,
At some point. At
Yeah,
some
at some
point,
point
man.
you do. And so I really enjoyed it. It came a little later in my life than I thought, but I tell you what, I had a blast there. Michael was so supportive. He was kind of retooling his team. And then a couple of years into the MGM Grand, he called me one day after work and said, "There's an opening over at Bellagio and I got to put you there." And how do you turn that down, right?
Right.
So
You don't.
I went over to Bellagio, met you and some of that team. And you mentioned something a moment ago about really having affection for your team. I still say that to this day. When I'm in a room with my executive team or my operations team, I said, "You guys, you got to feel this. You got to feel a true, sincere affection for one another." Now, let's keep
Yeah.
it clean, right?
Yeah.
We're talking about an affection where I would take a bullet for you. I'm going to be there for you. And I said, until we get to that point, and we're almost there, we're getting there, but we're not there yet, because the best teams in the world, we just finished an exciting World Series, and then there's a Super Bowl. The best teams in the world, they have reached that level where can you imagine on the Super Bowl and you're going down and you got 2 minutes to go and you got to score and you fumble the ball and the offense has to lead the field and the defense has to run on the field. And in these winning teams, there's no looks like you let us down. They opposite. They look and they say, "Hey, don't worry, go catch some air. We're going to get the ball back. We
Yeah,
got
I
you."
just got the shivers. I just got the shivers. Yeah, man.
I know. And that's
Yeah.
where I use this kind of example to the team a lot, saying, you haven't felt it yet, but we're going to get there. There's a tipping point where you're building a new culture and you start to see little victories.
Yeah.
Sadly, though, not sadly, it kind of has to happen. On that little journey, some of the naysayers have to find themselves out. Some of the people who don't get it, who don't really want that in their life, they start to feel uncomfortable and they find a way out. And the fact
Yeah.
that there's this tipping point that happens, that all of a sudden the team jives and the team gets, and then it's so rewarding to see
Interesting.
everybody having each other's back and everybody staying in their own lanes, but
Yeah.
respecting the other lanes completely,
Oh, shit.
respecting the other lanes.
So true.
And that's
Well,
what
I'm
I
gonna re-
strive for.
I'm gonna roll back on that a little bit. Two things that I'm gonna tell you that you've done in your life that I don't know if you know. First off, the Peabody Memphis is one of my favorite hotels in the whole world.
Love it. It's so
If
iconic.
anybody gets a chance to go to the Peabody Memphis and watch the Ducks, and I'm a big fan of Memphis and blues. I know a lot of people have feelings, but I just think it's the coolest destination. And your legacy of the Peabody, it goes within that hotel. I brought your name up when I was there on the site, and they all know Greg, and they were
Oh
friends
my
with Greg.
God.
And
Four
it comes
spectacular views there. I loved it.
it comes through for sure. So you left your double imprint there without a doubt. The second thing is, I know what you're saying is truth because of the idea that it's not words, it's an aura, an energy that we actually exude when we're within our authentic selves that our teams can feel. And the proof is that I always wanted to stand next to you whenever we were in a setting. because you were a strength around me. I can say that in other settings in my life, I didn't want to stand next to that leader. I wanted to stand as far away from that leader as I could. And now I know, looking back, why. Is
Oh my
because
goodness,
you
how
were
nice of you.
authentically yourself inside, and that exudes through that idea of connecting. And the words that you just used, being impassioned in that idea and creating that environment around you, that's exceptional. That doesn't come up in everyday's conversation.
Dean, it's
I'm
so
going to
nice
lead
of you to
you.
say.
I
That's so nice
want
of
to
you to
lead
say.
you somewhere though. I know you wrote a book.
Thank you.
And I know you put this in a book, and I know the audience might really appreciate that. How did you get started moving in that direction and wanting to share outside of your specific work environment and adding that extra layer? Because that's what's, again, motivated me later in life to realize, like, just being a meeting broker is great. I love my day job and helping my clients do what I do and finding the best spots and sourcing and contracting. But giving back into my community, the events community that I so cherish myself, I really felt obligated to share the information of the journey back in for whatever reasons it may have been. And I know that you do that constantly. And that's kind of the launching pad for this question is like, what drew you to wanting to be that type of person?
That's a great question, and it's a big part of my fabric and who I am and who I wanted to be. It's a passion, but I think number one, you doing your podcast. The podcast is kind of the new book, right? The podcast. This is your book, buddy,
Yeah.
and this is fun. This is a great way for you to share your experiences and share some of the people that have meant a lot to you during your way up. And so I think that I really admire it. I want to do a podcast too at one time. I got to figure out the time and how to do it. I'll call you for sure.
You please do.
where is where is my book here? I had it. Oh, here it is. So this is really funny. This is on Amazon too, and I really encourage you to go. It's not a money making thing at all. So don't get me wrong, but it's called Being the Unicorn: The Business Guide to Being Magical, Mystical, and Getting Noticed. And that would make you smile. I know it does, because that's kind of who I am. And
And
I
who I
always,
am now.
yeah, and I wanted to send this message loud and clear to folks. You got to despise mediocrity, and you got to be the unicorn. When a unicorn enters a room, people stop. Think about it. Metaphorically speaking, when a unicorn enters a room, people stop and they go, "Whoa, what's that? Something different is about to happen." And if we can bring that to our job and to our positioning, then we're halfway there. So the funny part of the motivation of the book is, it brings up our dear friend Michael Dominguez again. Him and I met when he was a very prolific speaker on the industry speaking circuit with Lowe's Hotels, and I was a speaker on with the Peabody Group. We would run into each other all the time, and that's how we met. And he was always so funny about. He'd see me checking into the hotel. He's speaking on Tuesday, and I'm speaking on Wednesday, and we're competing chains, but we had a great respect for one another. But Michael would always look at me and he'd say, "Did you bring those damn ducks?" Because sometimes I'd bring the Peabody Ducks on the road, which was
Yeah, they do. They do travel. I know. I heard this too.
and they
Yeah.
stole the show, obviously. They stole the show. But Michael was really funny on that. So long story short, a couple years go back, and then he hires me to work with him in MGM Resorts. And Michael turned into be probably the number one speaker in the
Yeah.
industry.
I still feel he is.
So
Yeah.
what was so funny about it is he would overbook himself. He would get sometimes double book and triple book because he was so he started calling me to do some of his speaking circuits, which was
Cool.
such a privilege that he would trust
Yeah.
me. But he also, I would say, "Mike, do you understand? I got to fly into that place. I got to go into a room, and they're thinking you're there. And now they see me." And he goes, "Don't worry. They know you. You'll handle it. You can do it." Michael was a great and is a great speaker when it comes to, no one can assimilate data and explain data like
No.
Michael Dominguez. No one
Agreed.
could. I could listen to him for days. He's the
Yeah.
best. But
Yeah.
what he said, he used to introduce me sometimes to groups. He'd say, "What you're going to love about Gregg is Gregg's a real good storyteller." So my style was just telling the stories. But back to the book, once I started doing these speaking engagements, mostly for Michael, I noticed many of the speakers on the circuit had a book, and I knew I had a book in my head.
Yeah.
So one summer I devoted myself. I stopped golfing for one whole summer, right? And
I remember that.
and I went ahead and I wrote the book, Being the Unicorn, and it gave me that credibility on the speaking circuit. And it was real fun at the end, toward the end of a lecture, I put the book up there and say, "Much of what we talked about today is in my book, Being the Unicorn." And I'd watch
Got it.
people ordering it right there in the audience, which was just a real kick. So it's been
Just the
about
fact that you can help them.
Yeah, it's been about 4 years now, and I still selling copies of the books to people that I don't do as much speaking as I used to by far, but I enjoy when I do, and I go to college campuses and I talk to the seniors who are about to get into this business.
Cool.
And then I watched them the other day. I was at Cal Poly campus here, and as I'm finishing my speech talking about the book, I see a bunch of the kids ordering the book, and it still makes me feel good, you know. But that's
Yeah.
how I get the book. But it's turned out to be kind of like a credential, like a
Yeah.
business card. But I
Sure.
really love the message. I read it
Yeah.
sometimes over again, and I go, "Wow, that was a good point. That was a good
Yeah,
point."
right. Yeah, I mean, like, yeah, sometimes we're inspired in a way where, we don't even record all the things that we know, but we get into that place. And I've also penned out a book. I wouldn't actually say it's published yet, but it's close. And you kind of planted a seed in me. I remember coming in on a Monday and I'm like, Greg, what'd you do over the weekend? You're like, I wrote my book over on Sunday instead of golf. And I'm like, I just golfed. And I'm like, I gotta do more. I gotta do more with my life. This
Yeah,
guy's showing me
it's
that it's
funny.
just not about going to work every day.
It was
But
about
you
a
and I,
10-month
we
process.
made it through a time in Vegas that it was rough, man. You had to deal with that shooting, if you don't remember right. And that was a real tough day for all of us. And you handled it as a leader.
Well,
Tell us how you got your way through that and what that meant to you.
you know, Dean, it's so funny that you mention that because I bring it up a lot at the right time.
Mm.
And right now, one of the things that I'm really harp on with my leaders right now, one of my hot topics is situational awareness and situational management. And once you kind of get what a manager is, and once you kind of get what a leadership is, and I think the next version of that, the PhD part of that would be to understand situational leadership or situational awareness. What do you know all the protocols and you know what things you should do, but what do you do when something completely out of the ordinary happens and people are waiting for you to make a decision? Years ago, you all remember the hurricane in New Orleans, Trina, and there was a big Hyatt Regency hotel that I know well. I've stayed in it many, many times. And I was so moved reading the postscripts about that hurricane, where the general manager of that hotel had some really tough decisions to make during that time period. And he made some decisions to protect his guests that, quite frankly, with the pressure he was under to open the doors to the whole general public, I don't know if I could have made the same decision as him, but he made the right decision and ended up saving lives. And
Wow.
that's when it hit home to me that, boy, if we're going to take on this role of running a hotel or running a big division, we got to start thinking about how would we react and what kind of leadership we really do. So back to the Vegas thing years later, I'll never forget going to bed that night and all of a sudden checking the news. No, I think a phone went off on a secret number that MGM sent out to all their VPs, that we were to dial into a certain call, an 800 number in the next 20 minutes. And then we were notified there's an active shooter. I turned on the TV and there it is. I'm 7 miles away from Bellagio at that point, 8 miles away from Mandalay Bay. And this is happening. And I remember calling our director of sales. You remember her at the time, Amy. I think
Hmm.
Amy's still there. And I said, Amy, don't we have some of our employees at this party, at this concert? She says, yes. And she was crying a little bit. And she said, I've accounted for 3 out of 5 of them or whatever. So that became our first thing. We had
Wow.
some of our sales team at that concert. But here's what here's the point I want to talk about. As you had complimented me on how we handled it from our division, I give such great kudos to Mr. Jim Murin at that point, who was running the hotel company, because I thought him on that phone call and then his next 48 to 72 hours afterwards on the leadership he showed, asking all of us. I remember his words directly saying on the phone call, he said, if any of you thinks tomorrow is just a ordinary day, you're absolutely wrong. Tomorrow is not about running a hotel. Tomorrow is being there for each other
Mhm.
and being there for our guests. So if any of you can make it in, and if any of you can get down to the Mandalay Bay, please go down there and be some help. So I did. And I went down and I worked the next 2 days in the lobby of the Mandalay Bay, just welcoming or just hugging guests and hugging employees. And all of a sudden, Jim Murin walks by. Now, he knew me a little bit, but he didn't know me a lot. He knew I was one of the VPs. He had a lot of people, though. He had a lot of employees. But I just approached him. I said, Mr. Byrne, I'm Gregg Herning from Bellagio. I'm the VP of sales there. I just want to tell you, sir, the leadership you've shown. I mean, nobody teaches you how to do this and what you've done. And he looked at me so sincerely, shook my hand, and he said, Gregg, you're right. Nobody teaches you how to do this. We just we got to be here for each other. And you being here today means a lot. And he gave me a little hug, and I'm just
Yeah.
thinking, okay, there's a great learning lesson. There was a great leader in situational awareness, right? There was a
Yeah.
leader who instinctively knew how to bring some calm and knew how to take a terrible incident and do what you can to make it just little better here, a little better there. So wouldn't you know it, as years went on, I have never had to face anything as that dramatic, but there have been situations in my career
Interesting.
where I've had to make a decision because everybody was watching me, and
You know,
I wanted to know, what is Gregg going to do in this situation?
you're displaying a quality of leadership. Again, the idea of the light shining through that the audience can learn from. You're looking for that idea of who you should be in your promotion, or what your role will be when you're there finally in that scenario. And it's not the words that we say, because it's how we are on the inside, and how we're built at that point, and who we are exuding that energy around us. And there's this superficial connection that's going on, and the people around you feel that. And I think that's just, you can't say enough about the reality that you were in a place that you could, put your time in, knowing that it was a bigger impact for others. Where I know there were some representatives that, just took care of their department, got their own area cleaned up and wanted it to go away because it was so horrific in our lives. We don't, people, nature, get back to it. But just to be able to bring that through into other things in life, I think it really does. Again, it exudes this idea of, we don't we don't necessarily build leadership in a title or a presence. It's built within us over time, and it's something that's happening around us that we're not really a part of. And that's kind of the thing that I always like to lean in on, is like, we're being guided in this bigger presence of life in some way or another. And when we show up for that place that we're supposed to be in, life blesses you around that. And it grows, from that perspective of energy and light. And you're an amazing example of that. Tell the audience where they can, what's next for Gregg Herning, and where you're going and what you're doing. I mean, if you want them just to come to your properties, let's give them an address, buddy.
So I work for just an unbelievable gentleman, Mr. John King, who I've known for probably 25 years. And we met through like many of us do, we met through a mutual friend. And he's always been just enamored about my career. And he's followed me kind of everywhere I've ended up: Michigan, Little Rock, Florida, Vegas. And he's always been, and I always knew he was a developer, and I knew he'll buy little boutique hotels and make them nicer. And he has great taste on property. He buys places that are just phenomenal. And so one day I'm working in, 4 years ago, I'm running a hotel in Newport Beach, California, and he heard that I was in California, and he knew that my wife Cheryl was an avid golfer, and he invited, and he loved my wife Cheryl, and he invited us up to his properties in the Central Coast area, about 4.5 hour drive from where we were, because I want you to test my golf course, And so we went up there, we played golf. We went out to dinner with him, and I caught up with him and what he's doing. And then over dinner that night, he just offered me a job to come and run his company, to run his hotel
That's
company.
awesome.
And
That's
I
awesome.
think it was planned. I remember the words he said. He says, well, Gregg, we've dated for many years. It's time we get married. Come on, you got to come out. And I wasn't looking for the job, but I knew that he wasn't a hotel guy per se. He was a developer, and a really good one, but he has all kinds of developing, retail and different things, and housing, neighborhoods, and hotel portfolio was his baby, though. He loved his little hotel portfolio, and now his golf course that he wants to build another 300-room convention hotel on. So anyway, I said to myself, I bet I could bring some of the brand expertise, and some of the industry. And so that's what I'm doing. And I've been 4 years at it right now. I swear to God, it's gone so quickly. It's like I've only been here a
Can't
year.
believe that.
But that's what I'm doing, and that's what I'll do up until the. I don't know when I'm gonna end it, Dean. I just like work too much, I don't know.
I
I don't
think
know
we
what to
will.
do if I retired,
Yeah. I think honestly, it just kind of finds this place for us. You'll
Yeah.
be a coach. You'll be an executive coach for sure in your retirement. I can tell you that
For
you're
sure.
primed for that, my friend.
I have a second book underway right now, so it's going to be
Great.
yeah.
Well,
And
we'll
I
have
want
to
to
bring you
go
back next year.
I want to go big with this one. I want to be a follow up to that Will Guidar's book out there, Unreasonable Hospitality, which is such a great read
Oh,
for
cool.
everybody. But he took a lot of this great expertise from the restaurant business, converted it over into entire hospitality industry, which I would like to take the same kind of message from the hotel business into the hospitality. So I'm working on a book right now. Yeah.
Yeah, it's valued. I mean, there's so many people like us, in their younger careers that are coming up. And to hear these kind of conversations, if I had heard those back when I was coming up, I would have found comfort in that. My son is adventuring into the world of management and restaurants now, coming out of the service industry. And we had a big long talk last night. And of course, it's just, we want to give everything we can. But the idea to see how organically it all grew around us, the only thing I ever reflect back on is I wish I had just taken another moment every day and just been a little more grateful for where I was and what was going on around me, because it literally is happening for us. And you can see by your story and the way that things have all unfolded and that we still keep in touch. And I consider you a dear friend. I mean, we went through a lot together, and you were there at a time where I needed you. And you stepped up, brother. I mean, I can't thank you enough.
Well, you can't believe it. That makes me feel like to hear you
Yeah,
say
I
that,
can't.
Dean. I kind of felt that. I felt that I was the support that you needed and that you
Yeah,
deserved. And I loved every minute of it. I tell you, it was so fun working with you in that complicated Las Vegas market, in that complicated hotel with a lot of egos. We dealt with a
yeah.
lot of
A
egos,
lot of politics. Yeah,
but we had a great team, didn't we? We really
we
did. We
did.
had a great team.
It was a special time, but I'll always remember and I'll cherish. And it in so many ways, it springboarded, ideals and things in my life that I just wanted you to know today. By the time I got to the end of this conversation, that you're making that difference, my friend, as the unicorn, whether you realize it or not. And I appreciate the conversation today. I hope we can get back on. Let's get back on in 6 months and see where this next book's going.
I love it. I love it.
All right, brother. Great to see you
What a
today.
pleasure, buddy. What a pleasure. And love to your family.
Thanks, man.
All right.
Well, there we go. Another amazing example of the universe working in its magnificent way today. Appreciate you showing up and look forward to seeing you again at Leadership and Enlightenment.